Welcome to the Enterprise University. In the second part of this exercise, we will learn how to install the client component of Interprise Suite on a workstation. The client component consists of the Interprise Suite application itself. When installing in any server or workstation, we have an option to include or exclude the client component. In the last exercise, we learned how to install the server components on the server machine. We will demonstrate now how to install Interprise Suite in a workstation. Later, we will demonstrate installing both components in the same machine. We are assuming that this is the first time you are installing the Interprise Suite application in a workstation. We are also assuming that you have checked for the hardware requirements and have installed the software prerequisites prior to installation. Note that the installer will detect the missing software prerequisites, then download and install them afterwards. We discussed the system requirements needed for client installation in the previous exercise. We will simulate installing the client component of Interprise Suite for the first time on a workstation machine. On the workstation, run the Interprise Suite installer. The installer will verify its content and detect missing prerequisites in the machine, if any. When prompted to install missing prerequisites, continue with the wizard setup and the installer will connect to the internet to download and install the requirements. After this, we may proceed with installation. Click Next to continue. In the next page, we may review or copy the licensing agreement. As a precaution, we are reminded to close all applications before continuing. Then click the checkbox to accept the licensing terms. Click Next to continue. Here we see two components to install, the client and the server components. When installing the client component only, select the client component, then set the installer to install the entire feature. In this example, we will not include the server components, so we will exclude all server components. To do this, select the server component, then set the installer to exclude the entire feature. Click Next to continue. We will be asked where to put the installation files that will be downloaded. On the download path field, we can browse or paste the directory or location in the machine where we want to install the component. Click Next to continue. In the next page, we will be asked to provide the SQL Server instance where the client component will connect to. We are assuming that the SQL Server is already installed on the server machine. If this is the case, we can choose which machine and server instance we will connect, given that the server instance is running or active and that we have access to it. If we will connect to a server over the internet, we can set the installer to install the SQL Server application where the cache database will be placed. When installing the SQL Server application and creating a server instance, we will need to provide the instance name and select an authentication method to use. Note that download and installation of the SQL Server might take a few minutes. If we are connecting to a database via local network only, we do not need to have SQL Server installed on the workstation. If we have yet to install the SQL Server in the server machine, or if we have yet to be provided access to the server, we can set the installer to not connect to a server instance this time and configure the connection later upon installation. In this example, we have previously installed SQL Server on the server machine and on the workstation machine. We will now connect to the server instance on the server using the authentication method we used. Click Next button to continue. In the next page, we will be asked to set the name of the Start menu group and if the desktop shortcut will be created for all users or only the current user in the workstation. Click Next to continue. Click Next to proceed with the installation. At this point, the installer will begin downloading components and install them on the machine. We will be prompted on every progress and any error encountered in the download and installation. When finished, we can choose to exit the setup or run the Interprise Suite application. After installing the client components on all the workstations, the next step is to configure access of user accounts from the workstations to the server and databases. We will discuss this in detail in the next lesson. Thank you for watching. In the next part of this exercise, we will learn how to install both the server and client components of Interprise Suite on the same machine.